Thank you. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be here. I believe in this industry, I believe in life insurance, and I believe in you. I think that life insurance people are some of the finest people in the world, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm just delighted to be here with you. It was not always thus. Many years ago, I had different ideas about life insurance when I was younger and foolish. And about 7 years ago, a friend of mine took me out for lunch and introduced me to a life insurance agent who is here in the audience today. And he asked me a few questions, and I gave him a few answers, and he called me up a few days later. He said, "Why don't we get together for lunch again?" So I thought that was pretty good. I could use a free lunch at that particular time of my life. So he took me out for lunch, and we had lunch, and then he took out his folder, and he had prepared a proposal for me, and he said, "Based on everything that you've told me, I think that what you need is $1 million worth of life insurance." My heart almost stopped. Look, I said, if it's the lunch that's the problem, I'll pay for the lunch. I said, look, I got $100,000 worth of life insurance. If something happens to me, the house is paid off. My wife and my children have the house free and clear. Well, he explained to me that that's not a sufficient answer, that they're going to have to go to school and they're going to have to eat and things like that. I said, yeah. I said, look, I'm not going to gamble against myself. I'm not going to, pay money to bet against myself surviving. So he explained that away. And I gave him every objection that you could imagine. I don't care how many objections you've heard. I gave them all to him. And he answered them all, just sort of like a boxer, just going boom, boom, boom. Well, finally, I was still determined I wasn't going to buy it. I said, okay, you've answered every question, but tell me, give me one reason why I should buy $1 million life insurance policy. And this is what he did. He folded up his stuff, he put it aside, folded his arms, and he leaned across the table, and he said, "Brian," he said, "you're simply too important a person to have anything less than $1 million in life insurance." Well, I looked at him, and he looked at me, and the thing was, he meant it. I asked him last night, as a matter of fact, and he assured me, yes, he did mean it. And I couldn't argue with him. What was I going to say? No, I'm really quite insignificant and unimportant. And no, so I said, can you make monthly payments? And he said, yes. So I took the insurance. Now, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that after I'd bought the policy, and I never regretted it for a second, no buyer's remorse, something happened to me. And I pass this on to you because I think that you should all sell $1 million policies. Because when I walked away with that policy, I felt like $1 million person. My self-image... You know that your outer life reflects your inner life. We all know that. My self-image changed. Instead of being a struggling business person with family responsibilities and too many bills and not enough money, I was $1 million person. When I signed a loan application, and I signed quite a few, I could put down there, insurance, $1 million. I started to think about that. If something happened to me, my family could live in style for life. I didn't think that I was worth more dead than alive, but I felt like $1 million person. And you know something? Over the years, the inner became the outer. And now I'm a $1 million person on the outside as well as on the inside, and I'm sure that being sold that $1 million policy had something to do with it. So don't sell it for yourself, sell it for the person. Because there's nothing better than to have $1 million policy and to walk around knowing you're $1 million person. Now, 3 years later, Gordon came back to me and sold me another $1 million worth of insurance. This time, permanent life. It's getting harder. But I want to tell you how much I believe in this industry. Last night, I just paid the deposit check for $2 million more of life insurance. I think it's an opportunity. You wait. I believe in life insurance. Anyway, did you ever stop and ask yourself, why is it that some people are more successful than others? Why is it that some people make more money, live longer, have better relationships, while the great mass of men, as Thoreau said, live lives of quiet desperation? When I was 15, I set out on a lifelong journey to find the answer to that question. Why are some people more successful than others? You see, when I was growing up, my family never seemed to have enough money. My parents grew up during the Depression, and I heard the same things over and over again throughout my childhood. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. I don't know if you heard that when you were growing up. It seemed to be the national anthem. I was not a great student. I passed out of high school when I was 18. I say passed out because, rather than graduated, because that's what happened. I passed out in the half of the class that made the top half possible. The person in front of me, and there's a lot of people out here in the same half. The person in front of me on the stage and the person in back of me received diplomas, and I got a leaving certificate. When you open it up, it says, goodbye. And that's what they meant, goodbye, don't ever come back. Anyway, since then I've traveled and worked in more than 80 countries on 6 continents. I've sailed on all the great oceans. I've been around the world 2 or 3 times. I became fluent in French, German, and Spanish. as well as learning to get along in several other languages. When you need to eat, you learn. Anyway, I started off as poor as I could be, searching for the secrets of success. And over the years, I've read and studied for over 30,000 hours in business, economics, psychology, philosophy, religion, metaphysics, and history to find the secrets of success. And I'm happy to say that I eventually found the answers I was looking for. Today, I live in a $1 million house on a golf course in Southern California, and I have business interests in 9 countries. Today, I know and I've proven that success in any field, including this field, is as predictable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. And my purpose in speaking with you today is to share with you some of the most important things I've ever learned. However, as Aristotle once said, you can't teach a person something that they don't already know. You're already high achievers and great successes in your careers. You're already the cream of your profession. So many of you already know what we're going to talk about, and the rest of you will recognize these principles as soon as you hear them. About 5 years ago, I met a wise and wealthy man who had spent his entire life studying success. And he'd reached a clear conclusion concerning the reason for success in life and especially in business. He's dead now, but I'll never forget what he told me, because I immediately recognized that he put the finger on my reason for success and yours, as we'll talk about in a minute. He said the key to success was to set a goal and then to stay with it until you achieve success in at least one important thing. He said that your subconscious mind will then accept that success experience and store it as a pattern, like a template. And then from then on, your subconscious will drive you and direct you and guide you to repeat the pattern of success in other things that you attempt. Another way of saying it is that nothing succeeds like success. Psychologists have demonstrated that achievement brings you a natural high. Once you've experienced your first great success, then not only are you unconsciously programmed to repeat it, but nothing else will ever give you the same wonderful sense of satisfaction. And all high achievers know that. Anyway, I learned the truth of this idea many years ago when I first started traveling. I spent 8 years traveling around the world. And in many ways, a trip or a journey is a metaphor for life. My first big trip was that, and much, much more. It had such an enormous impact on me that I've never really gotten over it. My whole life has been different as a result of what I call the Sahara Crossing. Let me tell you about it. When I was 18, 3 friends and I decided we'd go off and see the world. We were well out of high school, and we were laboring in sawmills on the West Coast. This is in 1963, and a lot of our friends were heading for Europe to travel around with backpacks. So we decided to do something different. You see, nobody else was going to Africa, so we decided we'd go to Africa. Of course, it never occurred to us to ask why it was that no one else was going to Africa. And that was our first mistake. After working and saving for a year, the 4 of us piled into an old 1946 Chevy and drove out of Vancouver, bound for Montreal via Toronto. Actually, we just passed a couple of blocks from here on our way on that trip. It was late at night when we left. It was pouring rain. We were all 20 years old, and we were off to see the world. Anyway, I learned later that almost every great venture begins with an act of faith, like driving into the dark, into the unknown. In a way, nature protects us by shielding us from knowledge of the difficulties and obstacles that lie ahead. Because if we really knew all the problems we would face, the setbacks, the suffering, the temporary failure, and the disappointments, many of us would hesitate about ever even starting out at all. And our plan was to drive across country to Montreal, get jobs on ships to work our way across the Atlantic, and then head south across Europe to Africa. Pretty basic plan. However, as it happened in Montreal, one of the guys decided to give up and go home, and so he left us. Well, that left 3. The other 2, after one day, I still remember that, after one day of looking for work on the waterfront, decided to quit. Decided to quit trying and to spend their limited savings to pay their way across the Atlantic, rather than to work their way. I tried to talk them out of it. I told them that quitting is a habit. If you quit the first time you run into difficulties, you'll always quit when the going gets rough. You will, in effect, establish a pattern for failure rather than a pattern for success. But their minds were made up, so we split our savings and they took passage on a ship to England. I worked on a construction site in Montreal, hauling heavy things for the entire winter, and then I got a job on a Norwegian freighter out of Halifax in late February and arrived in England in mid-April. As I had predicted, my friends had quit and stayed in England working at odd jobs. However, we soon made up, good buddies again, and once more we headed for Africa. At this time, all we had was an 8.5 by 11-inch page about this size that had Europe and Africa all on the same map, on the same page. And it seemed to be a very simple thing to go from London, which was up here, to Johannesburg, which was down here. And it was just one page. And I mean, we sort of drew a straight line, and we thought, you know, well, oh yes, there was a little orange part right across sort of a band right through the middle there called the Sahara Desert. Well, we thought, well, we'd just whip over that and get down to the green part on the map. There's no problem. This